Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Lauren Non, and I will be attending UC Irvine this fall as a criminology and law major. And I just want to start off by thanking you all for taking time out of your day to attend this Zoom session. We will continue to host Zoom sessions throughout this week to fulfill our commitment as an educational platform. However, in light of recent events, we also hope that you're taking this time to continue educating yourselves and your peers about the more important matters in today's society. Just a friendly reminder, you guys can ask us questions in the chat throughout the presentation, and you can message us, any of the hosts privately, or you can address the question to everyone in the chat, and we'll try our best to answer questions. If not, then the questions will be answered during the Q&A session at the end. Now I'm going to pass it on to Anne and Farah with their presentation on financial aid and scholarships.
Hi everyone, today we'll be going over a lot of what you need to know regarding financial aid and scholarships for college. My name is Farah and I'll be attending UC Davis in the fall as a biotechnology major. If you ever have any questions, feel free to DM me on my Instagram, which is on the slide.
Hi everyone, my name is Anne and I'm going to be attending Baylor this fall as a nursing major. And honestly, if you guys have any questions, and no matter how weird it is, you guys can message me on Instagram and I'll help you guys out as much as I can. And so today we're going to be going over the common, different type of financial aid applications. So the first one that's really popular is FAFSA, which stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid, the California Dream Act, and we also included the California Grant, which is not a different application portal, but we'll be going in depth about that, and the CSS profile. So what is FAFSA? FAFSA is a portal that assesses your federal aid eligibility. So based on your family income and savings, it will calculate your estimated family contribution, which is also known as EFC. EFC is really important because it helps colleges calculate how much additional financial aid to give you. And also by filling out FAFSA, you'll be automatically applying and be prioritized for federal loans, grants, and work study programs, which I will go in depth later on. And another misconception that I hear a lot is that many students don't think that they should apply to FAFSA because they don't think they're low income enough, but that's not the case. Despite your financial situation, you should always fill out FAFSA because colleges typically use that information to calculate your additional aid to give you.
So FAFSA opens on October 1st of each year, so try to get it done as fast as you can. You can apply if you are a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. If your parents are undocumented immigrants, but you yourself are in the U.S. legally, for example, you were born here, you should be eligible for FAFSA, but you should consult with a professional about it before moving forward. The entire application should take about 1 to 2 hours in one sitting, but that's if you have all the required documents on hand. So I recommend that prior to October 1st, you ask your parents to find their most recent income tax return records. For example, the class of 2020 filed their FAFSA in the year of 2019, so the most recent tax return would be 2018. In addition, you'll need to know you and your parents' social security numbers and driver's license information, as well as your family's assets, such as any additional property they might own. You'll also need to have a good idea of what colleges you'll be applying to, because FAFSA will ask you to list up to 10 colleges that you plan on applying to in the application itself, so that they can receive your financial information so they can provide you an accurate aid package. Putting a school on FAFSA that you don't end up applying to is okay. It just means that they'll receive your information, but there's nothing wrong with that. But if you forget to put a school on FAFSA that you do seriously plan on attending, it could mean that you're missing out on aid that you're eligible for. So definitely put as many schools as you plan on applying to. And after submitting your FAFSA, it'll take about 3 to 5 days to process. You'll get an email saying that it was successfully processed. And once that happens, you can go back to your FAFSA, where you'll have the option to make corrections to your application. You can remove the 10 schools that you originally put on your FAFSA and put down any new schools that you plan on applying to and resubmit the application once again. It is important to realize that FAFSA is first come, first serve. So the earlier you submit your application, the more likely it is that you can get the most aid that you're eligible for. So please try your best to submit the application as close to October 1st as possible.
So what is the California Dream Act? This is actually really similar to FAFSA, but it is for undocumented students, typically here on DACA. By filling out the California Dream Act, students will still receive many of the same benefits, such as financial aid, community college, fee waivers, and grants, but some requirements to apply is that you must attend a California high school for at least 3 years, and you must be graduating from a California high school. So earlier I mentioned some of the programs you're automatically applying when you fill out the FAFSA, and these are some of the popular grants and programs students should look into and will receive. So a lot of students will hear about Pell Grants, and Pell Grants work on like an entirely different system compared to SEOG, which is later down on the list, because Pell Grants will be given to any student that's eligible, so any students with exceptional financial need. Another popular one is the Cal Grant, which Farah will talk later about. And the Shafi Grant is typically for students in foster care or a ward of the state during the ages of 16 to 18. You may be granted to up to $5,000 for college or vocational school. And another one that a lot of students should look into is SEOG, which is Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant. This grant is for students with exceptional financial need. Again, these students can receive from $400 to $4,000 a year. Each school is amounted a certain amount for SEOG. So once those funds run out, no more grants will be given. So that is first come, first serve as well. And another popular one is teacher education assistance for college and higher education.
So Cal Grants can be a big source of aid if you're eligible for it. There are 3 different kinds, Cal Grants A, B, and C. Each one provides a different aid amount, as you can see on the slide, and you can qualify for one of them based on your educational goals. For example, you can qualify for Cal Grant A if you seek to obtain an associate's or a bachelor's degree. So even if you're planning on doing community college and you're transferring to obtain a bachelor's, you can still get Cal Grant A. And you can qualify for Cal Grant C if you plan to attend vocational school, but you also have to maintain a certain GPA to be eligible for each grant. So when you search up Cal Grant, you might notice that you need to submit a GPA verification form in order to be eligible for it. However, some schools, such as Irvington, automatically submits that form for you. So once you apply for FAFSA, you're automatically considered for Cal Grant, but check with your school first to see if they sent their verification form for you. However, another qualification you'll need to meet for a Cal Grant are the income ceilings. So each year, the California Student Aid Commission will post a table like the one shown on the right, and it basically shows the maximum income that your family can make based on your family size, and the maximum value of your assets that you can possess in order to still be considered qualified for a Cal Grant. And then you can also check your aid status for the grants by creating an account with California Student Aid Commission.
So next is the CSS profile. This is pretty popular among colleges. Yeah, I know like when students like me were applying, we had no idea what a CSS profile was. So CSS is through the College Board. You can find this through their website. So I screenshotted their website and then I circled it in red so you guys can reference it in the future. So essentially, the CSS profile is an application universities use to gauge how much non-federal aid to give you. However, I want to make note that not all schools participate in this program. So please check and follow up with the schools you apply to. Each school has different deadlines. Like seriously, be on the lookout because these schools actually give more additional aid, and you don't want to miss out on that free money. And so the first program you submit your CSS profile will cost you $25, but each program after that will be an additional $15. I would also like to make note that the CSS profile does ask you for more financial information than FAFSA does. So that additional information would be like the completed tax forms, W-2 forms, other records of current year income, records of untaxed income and benefits, assets, and bank statements. And to find out whether your school participates in CSS profile, I place a link at the bottom, and here's how the website looks like, so you guys can reference it later on.
So although this is not completely related to financial aid itself, fee waivers are a great way of saving money if you qualify for one. So if you take a look at the list on the slide, if you can respond yes to any one of these, then you may be eligible for a Common App and a College Board fee waiver. So for College Board fee waiver, you can see Ms. Abogado if you go to Irvington or to your school's College and Career Center. Once you explain your eligibility for a fee waiver, you'll receive a 12-digit code to input when paying on College Board. So the fee waiver covers 2 free SATs with or without essay, 6 free subject tests, 2 free question and answer service reports, unlimited score report sends, and you can waive all your fees for the CSS application. So in terms of the SAT, this mainly applies to the class of 2021 and 22 because they can still send their SAT scores to UCs. But even if you already took the test and you qualify for a fee waiver, you can still use your fee waiver for the free score sends, which can save you $12 per school, but it doesn't work for rushed score sends. For a Common App fee waiver, you should talk to your school counselor and they will apply it for you. And the waiver will waive most, if not all, of the application fees on the Common App, but that does not mean that you should apply to as many colleges as possible. Think carefully of where you actually see yourself going so that you don't hold a spot for someone who may really want to go to that school.
So I know it's gonna be a while before any of you guys receive like financial aid statements, but so just so you guys can get ahead of the game and understand, on the slide I put an example of how your like award letter will look like, and then there's some common terms that a lot of people get confused with, such as federal direct subsidized and federal direct unsubsidized, which I will be talking about here. So for subsidized loans, the government pays for your interest into the 6 months after you graduate. Typically, they give you about $3,500 to $5,500, while on the other hand, unsubsidized loans can range from $2,000 to $7,000. The thing is that this is not a need-based loan, and the interest accumulates once you take the loan out. That's why it's like a recommendation that you should pay your unsubsidized loans because the interest accumulates and will continue to arise. So it's better to pay while you're in school. And another loan option is Parent Plus loans. This is directly under your parent's name, and so they'll be the government or the agency will be looking at your if you have good credit score, and this loan is on a fixed interest rate, so the interest accumulates once the loan is taken out, similar to an unsubsidized loan. So another great option is federal work study. And this is what I mentioned earlier, that once you apply for FAFSA, you're automatically applying and prioritized for this option. So this is a program that allows undergrad and graduate students to earn money towards their college expenses. Some eligibility is that you have to be full-time or a part-time student at a college or a vocational school. You must demonstrate financial need, and like I said, you have to complete the FAFSA, and it is first come, first serve because there's not an unlimited amount of jobs. And the different jobs you can get for work study, you could be working on campus for nonprofit organizations or a public agency, so this is a great option as well.
So financial aid appeals become more important when deciding which college you want to attend after you've been admitted into them. You're going to want to compare aid packages that each college gave you. If you feel like the cost of a certain school is hindering you from attending it, you should request a revision in your financial aid package. You can do this by emailing the college admissions or looking for the correct appeal form on the college's website. The following list on the slide are valid criteria for requesting more aid. If there has been any change in your family's finances that weren't apparent on your FAFSA before, then it's worth mentioning to your school. There's no harm in asking for more aid because the worst they can do is say, no, we can't give you anything. So In your email, you should just explain that, you're really grateful for the opportunity or like for the offer of admission and the school is one of your top choices, but you're trying to figure out your finances, and in order to make like an informed decision, you'd like to request a revision in your aid, and just explain your circumstances. Moving on to scholarships, the biggest tip we have for you is honestly just apply to as many as you can that you qualify for. Scholarship awards can range from a few $100s to a full ride from a particular school, but even getting a couple $1,000s goes a long way and can pay for some of your living expenses. A lot of scholarship applications require you to submit an essay, but you may not need to start from scratch. By this point, or by senior year, you'll have written so many essays throughout high school and throughout your college application process that you don't have to write essays from scratch. You can just recycle your old essays and you can just edit and tweak them to fit the prompt better. A lot of applications open in the fall itself, so don't wait till after you've gotten into college to apply for scholarships. Apply as early as possible so you don't miss out. And when looking for scholarships to apply through, you can look through search engines, which Anne will go through later, and you can also check each college's website. A lot of times, your college application itself puts you in consideration for your college's scholarship awards, but other schools, such as UC Irvine and UCLA that I know of, have like supplemental scholarship applications that require additional info and essays besides your original college application. Also, check in with your high school's college and career center. Oftentimes, a lot of scholarships within your community go by unseen, which makes them less competitive. There are a lot of community scholarships open to only students at your school or district, so definitely apply to those because they don't have as many applicants. And certain scholarships are for people who participate in particular extracurriculars, such as if you play a sport, you're involved in leadership and like voluntary service, or you're into the arts. So if you look for those kinds of scholarships, it can be easier for you to stand out. And also, if you volunteer at a program or have an internship, ask around to see if they offer any scholarships as well. For example, I volunteer at Good Samaritan Hospital, and each year it awards around 10 high school seniors in its program with $2,000 scholarships, which is a lot. So previously I mentioned that you can qualify for scholarships exclusive to your school or district. This slide shows an example of what Irvington's college and career counselor sent to us through School Loop. It was a spreadsheet of scholarships with aid amounts, deadlines, and criteria to help to apply to. So definitely take advantage of these when your time comes because it can be easier to stand out with smaller scholarship applications.
So earlier, Farah mentioned search engines, and these are like three of the most popular ones I've ever heard of. So the first one is Unigo, the second one is FastWeb, and the third one is CapEx. So I'm mainly familiar with Unigo and CapEx, but for Unigo, I know that you have to make an account, and this account is personalized mainly just for you. So you'll have to put in your personal information. It'll be really like in depth, like it'll go talk about your religion, your ethnicity, like different activities you do, the different interests you do, and through all the information you put in, they'll like filter out all the scholarships that you could apply for. Like for example, there was a really random one, like a left-handed scholarship that I could apply for, which is really neat, and it's all in your profile. So you, I really suggest that one. FastWeb is another popular one. A lot of students use that. And the last one is CapEx. CapEx is really popular. You also have to make your account, at least that's to my knowledge. And another thing is that you do, I would suggest that you guys make a separate email because these search engines do sometimes fill up your email like heavily with different scholarships. And all three usually have non-essay scholarships that you can apply monthly, which is an easy way to earn free money. Oh, sorry, I forgot to make note about this. Later on, Lauren will be making a 2020toyou website, and on that website, we'll have a whole document of different scholarship resources you guys can look into. And so here is avoiding scholarship scams. Unfortunately, there's a lot on the internet, so I advise you guys to be extremely cautious about this. Some key points to look out is if they're asking you for a fee to apply for a scholarship, they're most likely scamming you because if they're giving away free money, they wouldn't be asking for money. Another one is if they ask for your credit card information, your social security number, your SSN, or bank account information. This is really unnecessary information that they need to ask you. So most likely they're asking you this information to hack into your account or withdraw your money. Another pitfall is if they claim you want a scholarship, but you never applied in the first place. Typically, they're scamming you and they're just spamming your email. So I would suggest to ignore those. And another one is that if they claim to give you exclusive access to a list of scholarships. If these like providers want to give free money, they wouldn't be hiding these resources in the first place. They would be trying to publicize this. So I would avoid those as well. And so a lot of students, I know college is really expensive, and despite like all the different scholarships and loans, students feel like they still can't afford college. But there's a lot of programs that the federal government gives out. For instance, PSLF, which is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness. So essentially, this program is once you work for a nonprofit for like 5 to 10 years, they'll write off your college loan, which is really neat. And I know this is a big misconception that since you work for a nonprofit, you won't get paid. That is not true at all. So, for example, not Anne and Robert H. Lurie's Children's Hospital Chicago, that's a nonprofit hospital, but working as a doctor or nurse, you'll still be earning money. So, so to be eligible for this, you have to be working for a government agency, nonprofit, Peace Corps, or you can be a low-income teacher. There's more requirements for this program you guys can look into, but this is just a nice program that the federal government has out, and I put the link down for more information. And before I close off this presentation, I also want you guys to know that there's also a lot of different programs out there. Like you guys can be going to Alumni College for the first 2 years, and it will be free if you fill out FAFSA. Education, it shouldn't be limited. So there's a lot of resources out there, and I know a lot of us would help you guys as well if you guys would reach out to us. So now I'll be passing it on to Raisah and Kriti.
Hi everyone, today Raisah and I are going to be talking about college interviews, which is a really important part of the college application process, and also if you're applying to any private universities, T20 universities, Ivy Leagues, or any special programs as well.
So here's a brief agenda of everything we're going to be talking about today. First, we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit. Then we'll go into different aspects of the interview process and how you can pretty much prepare for it. And then finally, at the end, we'll go into the Q&A session.
So as a little introduction, my name is Kriti Iyer. I'll be attending UC Davis in fall as a neurobiology major. And if you have any questions about the college application process or even high school in general, I'd be more than happy to help. You can just message me on Facebook or even on Instagram.
And my name is Raisah Khan. I will be attending UC Berkeley this fall. I will be majoring in political science with the intention of law. If you have any questions, you can message me through Facebook or through my Instagram handle, which is right there, raisah.k.
Okay, so let's get started. What is the college interview? Oftentimes there are one-on-one discussions with either an admissions officer or alumni before or after you submit your actual application to the college, and the time period depends on the school or the specific program that you're applying to. And to get an interview, an admissions officer or an interviewer will reach out to you through email or a phone call to schedule the date, time, and the location of your interview. However, this is also dependent on the college itself. So some universities such as Tufts and Vanderbilt have the option to select an interview, so you don't have to give an interview. It's totally up to you if you want to or not. An interview can affect your decisions sometimes, and for some universities. However, for other universities, it really doesn't matter. And it ultimately depends on the college or program that you've applied to. And most of the universities that require interviews are usually the Ivy Leagues or T20s, or even colleges with highly selective programs such as an honors program.
So how does an interview work? So there are three main ways that it can happen. Usually they are in person. So the admissions officer would email you and then you would set up a time and place that you're available for. But since things are happening less in person now, it is likely that things could transition to Skype or video call. And sometimes if there's not an interviewer in your area, it does occur over Skype or over the phone. And the interview can take place from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on which school it is.
So something that everyone needs to build in preparation for their interviews, definitely their communication skills. It's super, super important that when you are giving an interview, you use appropriate body language. This can mean a lot of things, but ultimately it tells the interviewer a lot about your personality. So for example, if you're slouching off in your chair just because it's comfortable, doesn't necessarily mean that you're paying attention to what the interviewer is saying. Also, if you're just staring off into space, that doesn't really make sense either, because it shows that you're not committed to the school or to the interview and you're actually just thinking about something else. It's also really important that you make eye contact with your interviewer. This doesn't mean like stare at your interviewer the entire time, but you want to actively listen, nod, and engage with them, ultimately to show your confidence to the interviewer about what you're saying to them. It's also really, really important that you clearly articulate your ideas. It's okay if you need a few seconds to come up with an answer, and you can definitely tell them, like, give me a few seconds. As long as you come up with a clear answer to the question and don't start talking about your cat James when the question is about why you want to major in something. And lastly, it's just a conversation. The best way to give an interview is to pretend that your best friend is interviewing you about why you want to attend a school or be a part of a specific major or a specific program, or even why you want to choose a career path.
So here are some basic questions that often turn up in an interview. So the first one that interviewers usually ask is, tell me about yourself. So this is a way for you to pretty much put out any information you want out there. And this usually segues into different topics in the interview. So for me, when I introduced myself and I started talking about my academic interests, this let the interviewer ask me more questions after that about my background and how I got into that academic interest. So as you can see on the left side of the slide, there are a lot of questions that the interviewers can ask about, like your academic history, why you're interested in the university itself, what you want to study at the university and why. And then aside from that, they do give you the opportunity to answer more personal questions. So questions about your personal growth, about your high school experience. And you can see here that, like, for example, what makes you unique. These give you a good opportunity to showcase more of your personality. So when you're preparing for your interview, you can look at these questions and kind of think about what answers that you would give to this type of information.
So here, Raisah and I put together a list of effective answers to some of the common questions that you saw on the previous slide. So when giving an effective answer to your interviewer, you don't want to be vague. You want to be as specific as possible, and that's what makes a strong answer. So for example, if your interviewer asks you how you spend your time or how you manage your time, you should say something along the lines of, when deciding how to organize my time, I learned to prioritize certain extracurriculars, such as my involvement with dance or something, because it resulted in good for the community, as opposed to just saying school was boring, so I put all my time into my extracurriculars. Likewise, if your interviewer asks you why you want to attend a specific university or a program, you don't want to talk about its prestige, because that's something the interviewer already knows. Instead, you might want to say something along the lines of Harvard's medical program, or the courses that Harvard provides for their biology students will allow me to prepare well for my career in medicine or something along the lines of that. This doesn't mean that your answers to your interview questions have to be only formatted in this way. Once again, there is no wrong answer to an interview question. You just want to make it as strong as possible by providing as many details as possible. You also want to try to avoid any negative adjectives or language. And lastly, once again, try to be as specific as possible and tie all of your answers back to you and your growth.
So after the interviewer is done asking you questions, they usually allocate 10 or 15 minutes of time for you to ask them questions about the school. So this is an opportunity for you to get to know the school more. Remember, the person interviewing you most likely went to the university for grad school or undergraduate school, so they have invaluable information about the campus. It's information that you can't necessarily find online, and they talk about firsthand experiences. So, for example, you can ask questions about the atmosphere of the campus, rooming on the campus, any advice for incoming freshmen. You can ask about opportunities, so like internships and clubs and extracurriculars, and about like the major that you want to do. So it's really good for that. And also, the college admissions officer is trying to sell you on the school too. So there's no shame in asking a lot of questions. They're really happy to answer them. Also, they look whether or not to see you're a good fit for the school, whether they can actually see you at the school. So asking these questions is a good opportunity to show off your knowledge of the school and specific programs that you want to do there.
So there are many different ways that you can actually prepare for an interview. One of the best ways is to practice with a friend or a family member, just someone you trust. For me personally, I practice with my parents and they ask me lots and lots of different questions. So this helped for all my interviews because I learned how to think spontaneously. But this being said, you don't want to rehearse verbatim and sound like you're giving a speech to your interviewer. You want your interview to flow very naturally. You can also look at sample questions. Usually you can just do a quick Google search, search up the university. So for example, like Penn interview questions or Tufts interview questions. And most of the time they will be available on the college website itself, but there are other sources or other websites you can definitely use to get more practice interview questions, such as Prep Scholar and stuff like that. Lastly, you want to also mentally prepare yourself for the interview. It's totally fine if you have a slip of the tongue. Your interviewer is not going to mind. Just make sure that you cover up for it and also accurately provide information and clearly articulate your viewpoints or what it is that you're trying to sell your interviewer on.
Okay, so now
Thank you so much for listening to all of our presentations. So now we're going to open up the floor to you guys. So
So you guys can ask us any questions. It doesn't have to be related to any of the topics we talked about today. And if you guys are uncomfortable, you guys can personally message me or Lauren so we can read the questions out loud. Or you guys can feel free to unmute yourselves and ask us verbally. Okay, so the first question is, how does the National Merit Scholarship work? PSAT scores. Did you guys want to answer that?
I can answer it. So PSAT and National Merit Scholarships are determined upon like your PSAT score. So each year there's a different threshold value or like a score, sorry. And if you score above that score, so for example, if it's like 1510 or 1490 or whatever, if you score above that, you will be considered, I believe, for the scholarship itself. And then there are a bunch of different essays that you have to write and different stages. I also know that you need teacher letters of recommendation, I'm pretty sure, in order to be considered. And the finalists and semifinalists get announced. I'm not 100% sure when, but I know some of the finalists were recently like announced. So you might have to like fact check me on this, but I know that's how the PSAT and NMSQT works.
Oh, another question is, what is the best way to prepare for SAT and ACT, and what is the difference?
I'd say for like SAT and ACT, a lot of people kind of experiment with it, and sometimes you may not do as well when you're doing some practice ones for SAT. And I suggest like you try both just to see which one works better for you. And when you do know which one that you'd want to prepare for, some people self-study themselves, like they dedicate a certain amount of time each week to doing practice tests, learning like the concepts, because for both standardized tests, there's like pretty general concepts, especially for math at least. Once you pick up like the pattern that they have for the questions, just keep practicing those same type of questions to prepare yourself. And also just it's a bunch of practice tests. Just keep doing them over and over and over again, and it'll prepare you much better. I know some people though decide to do some college SAT prep or ACT prep the summer before they're planning to take the SAT, and that's totally fine too if you aren't the best at like getting yourself to self-study.
Just to add on to Lauren really quick, for SAT, I know that like you guys don't have to go out for to like pay for SAT prep. Like I know a lot of you guys are familiar with Khan Academy, and they have a whole section for SAT prep. I think you guys should also know that Khan Academy is like has a partnership with College Board, so all their questions are formatted like how the SAT will look like. So a lot of us, I personally did the Khan Academy SAT prep, and it really helped me, and it was really similar to the test. And for the difference, ACT has a section for science, but it's not really science. It's like how to read data and graphs and how to analyze it essentially. And for the essays, SAT is more on. I haven't taken the SAT in so long, but the ACT is more about creative writing essentially. If you guys had anything else to add.
You know, I just think that ACT is like if you're stronger in like writing and grammar and like that part, ACT might be your stronger suit. SAT also has reading and grammar. It's just reading passages and answering comprehension questions and like basic grammar. But I feel like people who are better with that writing aspect, people prefer ACT from what I've heard.
I think the ACT also is more like if you're better working with a lot of problems in a short amount of time, then you should take the ACT because you don't have a lot of time and you have a lot of questions to answer. But the SAT, you get more time to answer less questions. So if you're a little bit of a slow worker, then the SAT may be better for you. But again, just like try taking both to decide which one you should ultimately take.
Okay, so the next question is, what colleges can you transfer to from alumni? Would anyone like to add on this?
I don't mean to dominate, but to like quickly add, this Friday, Caitlin and I forgot who the other host is, but they're gonna talk about the UC tag system. So if you want to transfer from like a community college to a UC, that's a really unique way. And honestly, you can transfer to any school. You just need to apply. Like I know one student, they went from a community college to Harvard. So up to you really. But if anyone else has anything to say.
I think sometimes some community colleges guarantee admission, but it depends on like which UC it is. I'm not 100% sure if they guarantee admission to every single UC, and I'm not sure which community colleges do it. I don't know if alumni is part of that, but that's something you might want to look into.
I know that certain community colleges have higher acceptance rates into different UCs. And I also know there's some that transfer to like the Claremont colleges in SoCal. So like I think De Anza is one of them. So like Claremont, McKenna, and like Pomona. So definitely look into different community colleges if that's something you want to do, because there are different opportunities for different California ones.
to add on to what Kriti was saying, I know Deanza and Oloni follow the tag system, and like Anne said, we'll be going more into depth about it on Friday, but in case you're not attending that one, tag system is basically an admission guarantee into, I believe, 6 out of the 9 UCs, only one of them though. So besides UC Berkeley, UC LA, and UC San Diego, if you go to Ohlone or De Anza and probably a few other community colleges that use the tag system, you apply, or you basically select one of the 6 UCs that are eligible for tag, and you're basically guaranteed admission into that school as long as you meet your requirements at community college. So that's why a lot of people prefer community college for that aspect, because you're guaranteed admission into the UC of your choice besides the top 3, and you save 2 years worth of tuition and housing.
Sorry, I was muted. Now we'll move on to the next question. Someone asked, do all Ivy applicants do the interview, or is it only if they're interested in you based on your application?
So it's not based off of how interested they are in you, because a lot of the times the interview is like right after you submit your application. I remember one of my interviews was like 3 days after I submitted my application, so they don't even have time to read your application by that point. Usually it's based off of whether there are interviewers in your area. So like it's based off of the alumni network. So if you don't get an interview, it's actually not the end of the world. So it's good, because if you do get an interview, it can help you, but in no way can it hurt you, if that makes sense.
Would anyone like to add to the question? Okay.
Just really quickly, for the only Ivy that I applied to a really, really specialized program at Penn. And because I didn't have any alumni in the Bay Area, I had to do a phone interview with someone in New York. So it totally depends, like Raisah was saying, if you don't have any alumni interviewers in your area, you may not even get an interview, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything bad. So don't freak out about it if you don't get an interview.
Okay, and the next question is, do you guys have any recommended tutors for SAT and ACT prep? For this question, I know a lot of like kids tend to take SAT prep before their junior year of high school. And generally they do it in the summer so that a lot of people plan to take it in August or October, just so that after they do the prep program, it's more fresh in their mind as compared to like throughout the year when you have like to worry about your academics and other extracurriculars. In the Fremont area, at least, I know there's like Excel prep, Elite prep, and I believe if you just search online, I'm sure you can find a bunch in our area, especially because so many people do prep programs. However, don't feel pressured to take the prep programs, because I know a lot of people who did self-study and they did pretty well. I think it just depends on how well you study yourself.
To add on to Lauren, I know I already mentioned it, but Khan Academy, it's free, you guys. It's really helpful. It's like the same format, the same wording, so it won't trip you up on the test.
Yeah, and there are lots and lots of resources online, so you don't have to spend like $2,000 or $3,000 for like a 4-week course at like Excel or Elite or something, because you could basically find those same things online as well. And like you always have upperclassmen that you can ask for help if you absolutely need it.
The only major difference that an SAT like prep course gives you that like online resources don't is that it's a discipline. So because you're going to a prep program every single day, like early in the morning, taking a test once a week, like that discipline kind of helps you get used to like taking the test. But that's that's the only like upper hand that an SAT prep program gives you. So if you can like handle, like if you can like discipline yourself and, you know, really utilize the online resources for your own benefit, then you should be fine. And if you guys don't know already, like the UCs, I mean, this doesn't apply to all schools, but if you're specifically focusing on the UCs, they've also announced that they're no longer requiring SAT scores. Correct me if I'm wrong, but after COVID, they agreed that they don't require it from you guys. So if you already took the test, then that's great. You can still provide your scores, but that's only for the class of 21 and 22. And then beyond that, they're not even accepting SAT scores because they're going to have their own standardized test. So I'm not, like, the only reason you'd want to submit an SAT score or take the SAT after this point is just to stand out a little bit more. But it may not be worth like the $3,000 or $4,000 like Kriti said, because it's not necessarily required.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. Someone said, how early can you take the SAT? And I believe Alan answered it in the comments, but if anyone has more input on it or like recommendations, then by all means.
I think you should definitely take a practice test to gauge like your score. And if you're scoring near where you want to, and like this is different for everyone, that's why I'm not saying like if you're scoring above like a 1570 or 1580, because people have different thresholds that they want to meet. If you're scoring around like the score that you want to actually score on the SAT or ACT or whatever, then I'd say you're relatively prepared to take the actual exam. And if not, then maybe spend a few weeks brushing up some of the concepts so that you're better prepared for the actual exam.
To add on, I don't mean to throw Lauren under the bus or anything, but I know she took SAT really early. Like I think she took it her sophomore, freshman year. You can honestly take the SATs anytime you want, but I would try to take it close around your junior year because then it's closer to the days you're submitting it. And I know some schools, they want it to be within the 12 months you're applying.
And
Also, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you go to Irvington, then your junior year might be a good time to take it because you don't have any benchmark projects. And I don't know if they're gonna continue benchmark projects or not, but like with sophomore year with WIP, I think stuff did get a little stressful for me personally. So I decided to take it my junior year when I only took like a few AP classes because I didn't have a benchmark project to focus on, so I could spend that time towards like my SAT prep.
And also, so for the SAT math section, there's certain concepts that you'll need to know, and maybe like the later on that you wait to take it, you'll have taken a math class that have gone over those concepts, so you don't have to self-study for those math portions. So that's why I feel like right before junior year is like the sweet spot for most people who have already taken like algebra 2 probably, and like you honestly need to know that much and like maybe a little bit of trig for SAT, which is why people probably wait till then.
Did anyone else have anything to add to that? Okay, so moving on to the next question. I know Alan already answered this, but someone asked, what are some examples of schools that take interviews heavily into account?
So I know people think the Ivy League would probably take interviews more into account, but this is actually a common misconception. In fact, I think they don't weigh interviews that heavily typically because there are just so many qualified applicants that it just doesn't make that much of a difference. But I do know specific programs. For example, Berkeley MET is based off of the interview, so you get into the program if you have a good interview. So other more specific programs care a lot about their interview. Also, if you're applying for schools out of the country, like in Europe. So for example, Oxford weighs really, really heavily on your interview. And yeah, I don't know what else.
Yeah, I think Raisah covered it all.
Fari or Lauren, did you have anything to add? Okay, moving on to the next question. Do you guys have any recommendation for free preparation for ACT online? Because Khan Academy only has SAT. And I don't mean to barge, but I have an answer for this. For ACT, there's actually an ACT Academy online that's free, and Kaplan Test Prep also has some free resources online. But that's all I know.
For me, for the ACT, I just found a bunch of practice tests online and I just kept doing them, and that was it. And it was pretty helpful because you just get used to the type of problems.
Yeah, for the ACT especially, the more problems you do, the easier it becomes, especially because like when you're so used, or at least for me, I was so used to the SATs format that when I switched over to the ACT, I was doing so poorly that I started doing like so many different tests, and that was, I used that to increase my score significantly.
Did anyone else have anything to add? Okay, moving on. Is there anything specific to focus on when researching a school before an interview?
I think it depends on like the type of interview you're having. So, for example, if it's for a specialized program, you definitely want to know what the program offers and how you will use it to benefit you or in your future. So for me, for example, I applied to a program that's specific for bio and business majors. And so I had to think of like different ways that I could use what I learned from that program in my future. But like I said, it definitely depends on like the program or what you're being interviewed for. So like if you're being interviewed for a scholarship or something, definitely think about how that money is going to help you in your academic career, not necessarily just like the school in general. I don't know if that answers the question.
Would anyone like to add?
Yeah, I think you should just look into stuff that you're interested in at the school because, for example, if you're applying for like a pre-law major, it doesn't make sense to research a bunch of stuff about like the sciences or stuff that you're not going to study at all. So if you look into really, really specific things, even if you look into professors at the school, that could be good, or like a professor that you might want to work with and like you're excited about like meeting them or being in their class. But yeah, because you just want to like just establish that you could be at that school. So like talk about the parts that you see yourself being at.
Okay, and another question we have is, I heard that standardized tests might not be required anymore. Is this true? And if it is, which graduating classes will be affected? I believe the UC system announced recently that the class of 2021, so like the incoming seniors, submitting a score will no longer be required. However, it will be optional. So if you already did take the SAT or ACT and want to send it in, definitely send it in, especially if you feel like you scored well. I think online I can find a link for you where like which classes will they won't consider it anymore, but I think they're slowly going from optional to I think it's like score blind. So that means they may or may not take into account your score, and then eventually they're just going to not use scores at all if you submit it. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
I know it's kind of kind of off topic to the question, but even though the UC system is being test optional, I would suggest you guys to still take the SAT or ACT because a lot of schools outside, if you want to like wider range of schools to apply to, they will be probably still be test optional or test required. So it depends on where you're applying to.
Okay, and the next question is, do colleges care about how many times you took the SAT? So like for this question at least, a lot of people, or I don't know, a lot of people tell me or advise to not take it more than 3 times, um, just because like they'll just they'll see that you've tried that many times. But um, I've known some people who have taken it more than 3 times, and they were still able to get into some pretty good colleges. So I think it just depends on how you feel and where you are, like with your score. If you still feel like your score isn't like adequate enough for yourself and you want to keep improving, then do like what is necessary to get the score that you're striving for, but try to not to take it too many times.
Even if you do take it multiple times, the important thing is that you should try to improve every time. So if you do take it 3 or 4 times, but you do improve a little bit every time, then that might still help you because the colleges can see that you're doing well. But if you see yourself getting a lower score each time, then you may just like want to stop and just submit like your highest score, if the college allows you to. I know like I just submitted, like I took the SAT twice because I thought I could do better than my first score, but I ended up doing worse because of the curve. So I know like I used to think that I had to submit all my scores, but I only submitted like my first score for the UCs and everything was fine. So
Also, in my opinion, I think, or like from my personal experience, when I took the SAT a couple of times and then it wasn't really clicking for me, so I just switched over to the ACT. So if you find yourself like feeling like you need to take it too many times, maybe just try out the ACT, because for a lot of people, they're usually like much better at one than the other.
Kriti, do you have anything else to add? Okay, so moving on to the next question. When do you exactly start applying to colleges?
You can start, I think, whenever they open their portals, or whenever the Common App opens and then the college also opens their portals. So sometimes that's in August, sometimes that's in September. In my personal experience and from like what my friends also did, we all applied. So the UCs, we applied, I think like the week before the deadline, I think November 30th, we applied a week before. That's when we hit submit. And then for the other colleges with deadlines in January, either January 1st or the first week of January, we all submitted in late December. But ultimately, it's up to you and how quickly you can get your supplemental essays and stuff like that ready. Even before the college portals open, you can make a common application account and start filling information in. And same thing with the UCs as well.
Alan mentioned this in his answer, but definitely like start, or you can plan like what colleges you want to apply to as early as you want, but really start looking into like the essay prompts for UCs and Common App because those usually stay the same every year. So really look at that starting like the summer before your senior year, and just like even if you can't like you don't just like start planning stuff or brainstorming ideas in your head. You don't have to necessarily write them right away, but definitely start in the summer before like all your homework starts to get to you, and before Quest hits you, if they still have it in Irvington. And also like just look at the prompts from now too, and like if there's something that you notice like you need to work on so that you can like make your application stand out, like that's what looking at the prompts ahead of time can help you with, so you know like what areas you need to work on and like make your application look stronger. So just it's never too early to look at the prompts itself.
If anyone didn't have anything else to add, in your opinions, is it bad to study the ACT and SAT at the same time?
I can go first.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll just go. In my opinion, I think so because the types of questions are different. So for example, for math, the ACT definitely covers a lot more higher level math topics. So that's why I wouldn't recommend studying for the ACT and SAT at the same time. So if you don't know all those concepts, you're definitely going to be confused when you're studying for the SAT and ACT. But besides that, I mean, if you are capable and if you have the time and dedication to studying for both of them, then by all means, you can do it.
Just to add on, like, I think maybe it was just me personally, but I think it was just hard studying for both of them at the same time because the wording was just different. Like, I was so used to the SAT, like the way the wording was for the questions, that when I went to the ACT one, I like kind of bombed my practice test, but that was just personally me. Did anyone else have anything to add? Okay, moving on to the next question. What if you're not sure about what academic interests are, what you want to major in, basically?
So I struggled with this throughout my high school career because I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, and I felt like all my peers knew what they were doing. Many of them were going into computer science or the pre-med route, and I feel like that can like pressure you into wanting to find out what you want to do later on, but don't let that worry you, because I think you should just use your high school experience, like your high school experience to just explore. Like join as many explore all these clubs, extracurricular sports, and that, like things you've always wanted to do, and see which one grasps your interest the most, and the ones that you really wanted to devote your time to, and then stick to those, and like just continue to build your like interest through those, and it might help you figure out what you want to do later on. Some people, if they really don't know what they want to major in, they may apply undecided. I don't personally have experience with choosing undecided, so I don't know how that would influence your admissions, but yeah.
I know I read somewhere like majority of students in college like change their major at least once. So it's totally fine if you don't know what you want to do, because even people who do know what they want to do going into college, they might realize after taking certain classes that they don't enjoy it, and they end up changing it anyways. So like don't feel like scared that like you might not, like you just don't know where your life is going at this point right now. Like it's just, college is like a time to explore. And the first 2 years of college, or your lower division, is just general education classes. So like a lot of the classes are basically the same, or a majority of them are like core classes that all students need to take. So you can also use that time to really like find yourself and decide like at least like what area you want to go into. So like don't feel pressured to have to decide right away.
Did anyone else have anything else to add? Okay, moving on to the last question of today. Do your chances of getting into a certain college decrease if you are applying for financial aid? Can you also give us some examples of NEET blind schools? I could briefly answer this. Most schools in the US, their financial aid offices work like independently of the admissions office. So like if you get accepted into the school, then financial aid will calculate like how much money they're willing to give you, essentially. But if you're asking for financial aid, they're not going to decline you for that. Yeah. If anyone else had anything to say.
I don't.
Sorry.
Here you go. Ahead. Oh, me. Okay. So I'm gonna say, Kriti, you go.
Okay. I was just saying, if you wanted a list of like all the colleges that are NEET blind, you can definitely find it online. But I just did a quick Google search, and some of the universities that are NEET blind are Hamilton, Harvard, Harvey Mudd, MIT, Rice, Stanford, Tufts, U Chicago, Penn, Notre Dame, Vanderbilt, Yale. So there's a huge list of colleges that are NEET blind. If that's something that will affect your admissions decision, then definitely make sure you search that up before you apply.
think something else to just like take note of is that private schools usually give more like a bigger financial aid package. Given that their cost of attendance will be larger, it may not like mean as much, but they do give more because they usually have like more funding available. So like I mentioned before, like you can request a financial aid appeal, and universities are more inclined to give you more aid versus like out of state schools. Um, they they kind of want their out of state students to pay the most that they can, so they may be a little bit more stingy giving aid. So it's just like important to keep that in mind. But when applying to colleges, I don't think that your need for aid is used in deciding whether you should be admitted or not.
I said this was the last question, but there's another question that I thought was kind of important. But what is your biggest takeaway from the college application experience?
There's a lot.
I think the main thing was for me was like, I know it sounds kind of idiotic, but like trust the process. Like, like everything might not go your way, but like I believe that everything happens for a reason. Like if they didn't choose you, if they didn't accept you, then it wasn't the perfect fit. Like they didn't deserve you. But I don't know.
Yeah, someone told me they were like, acceptance rates don't matter because the right school for you has 100% acceptance rate for you. So, but definitely like looking at colleges themselves and like learning about them. I wish I had learned about like colleges themselves more originally so I could kind of figure out for myself where I saw myself. But at the end of the day, you will be accepted into a school that is best for you. And after all, college is what you make of it. So even if you're not happy with it, there are a lot of resources everywhere. So it's definitely not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, it was the same thing as Anne as well. I learned to trust the process, and at the end of the day, I'm not mad with where I ended up. And if the college didn't want to accept me, it's because like maybe I wasn't a good fit for them or whatever. I also have one piece of advice, if that's okay. Definitely look into scholarships and financial aid opportunities because that's something I did not do, and I kind of regretting right now. So even if you end up going to UC or like a private or public institution somewhere else outside of California, apply to scholarships because like even like Farah was saying earlier, $500 or $1,000 can make a difference, and sometimes it's like a make or break situation. So that's something I would definitely advise everyone to look into.
And I would just say like try to keep an open mind. Like that can be hard if you really have like your heart set on a certain school. But like there's no guarantee that you'll get into it no matter like how like good of a student you are. Because there's honestly a lot of schools like their admissions it's just like a lotto system because you never know like who's gonna get in, and especially like with the circumstances like surrounding coronavirus, like my plans certainly changed. Like I never considered going to certain schools until like if it hadn't been for this year, and like you'll never know what's gonna happen when your time comes. And so definitely like finances played a big role for a lot of us students, and like I may have like I wanted to go to a school that may not have been as close to home, but because of everything that's going on, like my parents wanted me to stay closer, or like I even considered doing community college just to save the money because of like the economy right now. So just don't go into the college admissions process with a narrow mind and like having your heart set on just a certain school. Just know that what Anne and Kriti said, like you'll go where you're meant to go, but just have an open mind about it.
I think for me, at least for the college application process, I learned the importance of not procrastinating. Some of the applications I turned in were kind of late, and I feel like our best recommendation would be to try submitting it at least a week before, because A lot of application portals are known to crash right before, like a few days maybe, since like waves and waves of applications are being sent in. So just try your best to plan out, like set aside some time to keep working and building upon your essays. Like don't feel pressure to like start super early, but it doesn't hurt to. And if you have like that foundation and that basis, you can just keep editing it, especially as the school year begins. You're not going to have enough time, or you have also, if you're senior, then you have quest projects, you have APs maybe, and like you'll find it hard to balance all those things. So yeah.
Going off of what Lauren said, just make sure you actually hit submit once you fill out your application, because I know this happened to a couple of people that I know. They filled out everything in their Common App and then they didn't hit submit. So just make sure you hit submit so that your application actually gets sent to the university.
Okay, ending on a happy note, I'm gonna wrap up the call now. If you guys want, you guys can stay back, ask us more questions, and if you guys want to, you guys can personally message us on Instagram or on any of our handles. But if Lauren, you had anything else to say?
I get a lot of questions about whether like we record and we'll post the presentations and such. At the end of this week, we plan to launch our website at least, and there you'll be able to find all the resources, all the hosts' presentation slides, the recordings of these presentations, and I believe some other members of 2020toyou are making infographics that summarize each presentation well, and those might be helpful, especially if you're more of a visual learner. Yeah, so we'll try our best to get that in by the end of the week, and if to get access to that, join our Facebook group. I think I linked it above, but if you need it, just private message any of us and we can send you the link to join. With that being said, I think that's probably the end of it, but you're free to stay back if you'd like to ask us some questions. You can unmute yourselves whenever.